actually all a family. Our entire family is in real estate.
Being a developer and builder, I kind of breaking this down into 5 key components, that you guys are going to need. One of the biggest hurdles, first steps you got to make is figuring out where you're going to get the capital, right? So costs have really gone up. When we started, land was like, we bought a piece of land for like $37,000. Now land is probably double that. I was blessed to get in a window of opportunity, where we had a lender that opened it up for brand new builders. There are some lenders that'll do that still today, because one of the key things we do in order to help keep costs lower is we buy bigger lots and then we split them, right? And that's a lot of what you'll see in this process is everyone assumes that you know what you're doing. So no one warns you or tells you like, hey, maybe you should think about this. Everyone's like, yeah, sure, you want that? Go ahead, right?
My husband, Harold. Wave your hand, Harold. He's in the back. So I'm the K and he's the H for HK Lending. And what we mostly just kind of deal with the regular residential commercial transactions. Levon is the ace in terms of the development side and construction and all of that good stuff. But we are a team, so God bless you. So yes, anything that you need, hey, any questions, we're here. We love to help you all and want to help you all grow. We all grow. We go to y'all grow. We grow. We all grow together. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Levon or to Diana. It's your turn.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank you guys so much for coming out and spending your morning with us. I hope you guys enjoy the bites that we've prepared for you guys from Kay's Kitchen. So, and the homemade banana bread that Mom made. Yes, it's homemade. Oh my gosh, our dinners are amazing. So I'm Levon's. Yes, sorry, I can stay up here and chat all day. So I'm Levon's wife. We're actually all a family. Our entire family is in real estate. Mom and Dad, they have been in real estate since first. When I met Levon, they were in real estate. And so Levon and I have kind of just continued that on with our, dreams and desires and ambitions that we have always led us to real estate. A little bit about us. For us, things all started just as a normal family. Wife, husband, kids. We lived in California. I'm from Houston, Texas. Levon was working. I was a stay-at-home wife with the little ones. And we were always trying to plan our future. What are things going to look like for us, for the kids? How are we going to build their legacy? Because we want to be able to hand something to the girls when they get older now. They're teenagers now, preteens. We have a 9, 11, and 13-year-old, all girls. And so what we do is because we love it, we have a big passion for real estate, but also we want to build something that our children, that we can teach them and give to them. They've been through the trenches with us too. They've seen all of our projects from the ground up. So the way we started was mainly just tapping into the equity of, our assets that we had, our first home, Levon's work at the time. God is good because he's, been able to now just be, self-employed. We're all full-time entrepreneurs now. And so I always say, hold on to that job until you don't have to anymore, and then just keep running with what your mind and your heart leads you to. For us, it's been real estate, and now, we're trying to help teach others do what we've done. I always say, if we can do it, I promise you can do it. It seems really hard at first, but once you get a few projects under your belt, it's just kind of like a rinse and repeat and improvise. What else do we want to do different? What didn't we like with that project? What do we want to do with the next one? And the vision just keeps on growing. Levon wrote a book, which I am wearing also. Yeah, see, I've got it on the guns. So anyhow, this is a wonderful book. I don't know how he made it a 6-hour read, but this is a 6-hour read. You'll need to read it twice. We also have the digital version of it, but this kind of summarizes some of the stuff we've been through, some of the knowledge Levon has been wanting to share. He's had this book inside him for years, and he finally wrote it. So yeah, so we're here just to kind of, share some of, what we've been through, what the journey's been like, and just to let you guys all know you can do it too. There's enough meat on the bone for everybody in real estate here in Texas. So, all right, y'all enjoy.
Thank you. All right, let's get going.
Yes.
So a lot of questions I'm sure you guys will have. I'll try to pick, if you got a question, just, you can stop me and I'll try to answer it as much as I can, but I got a lot to go through, so I'm gonna just run through this and then hopefully I can answer anything you got. So, we have, give me a sense of who we have in the room. Actually, and I gotta pray before we start because I wanna bless the food, but who do we have in the room right now? We have, I know you're a contractor, right? You investor? Contractor.
Yeah, investor and also
Okay.
studying to be a realtor right now.
Okay, perfect. And you're in mortgages, right? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, investor.
Investor, awesome. Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. So a lot of what I'll cover should be relevant for either you or your clients. I'm going to talk about I'm going to try to fit in quite a bit. We're going to talk about the lending portion of it, kind of the steps, the phases of the new construction process, and kind of why we do what we're doing, why we build duplexes, et cetera. So I'll go through all that. But just quick, I'm just going to pray over the food just quick. Father God, I thank you for bringing us here today. We know you don't make mistakes. Thank you for this divine appointment. Thank you that the wisdom that goes forth today, the seeds that are planted today will land on good soil. I thank you, Lord, for allowing the wisdom that I share with these people that you have here, Lord, will be food for their minds, be a light unto their path to help them to move forward and execute. And bless the food, bless the hands that have prepared it, and keep us safe as we leave this place. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So I just want to play this quick. This is a project we just completed.
Are you built different? Can't be scared to get down and dirty in the trenches. Learn a skill set that will make you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mentorship is the key to success. It's about legacy. What is your why? This is how you build generational wealth. Ultimately, ownership multiplied over time is what equals wealth.
We did 2 duplexes in Sunnyside. Ended up getting appraised at 1.2. I'll break down a little bit of that here on the numbers on the build and stuff like that a little bit later. But 5 critical components to success for being a developer and builder. I kind of breaking this down into 5 key components, that you guys are going to need. One of the biggest hurdles, first steps you got to make is figuring out where you're going to get the capital, right? The capital to source your land, because, one of the hardest things to do is to acquire the land with cash because, costs have really gone up. When we started, land was like, we bought a piece of land for like $37,000. Now land is probably double that. So this has become a big hurdle, but there's various, capital sources that you can tap into, from business credit to actual credit cards or whatever you got to do in order to acquire the property, and then you can work out a situation where you underwrite the deal to where you can get those funds paid back in the deal. The other key component that you have to have is prior experience. That track record piece is going to be a hurdle, but I'll show you there is a way to get around that. I'll talk about that briefly. One of the first things a lender is going to ask you though is what is the prior experience that you have, right? And typically they want to see 3 to 5 bills typically prior experience, which is kind of tough because it's like, well, how do I get my first one if you guys want me to have 3, right? So, I was blessed to get in a window of opportunity, where we had a lender that opened it up for brand new builders. There are some lenders that'll do that still today, but they do have large reserve requirements. So it is possible, and I could talk about that later as well. And then, you got to have the knowledge on the process, right? The mentorship piece, to me, in my opinion, is kind of the accelerator in order for you to have the quickest path to success, is to try to get with someone that's been down the path you're trying to go and have them show you how they got there. And then the team to execute a project, right? Being able to have the contractors that are vetted, guys that know what they're doing, to where you don't have to keep trying different people that are going to kind of mess up your project, and then you have to fire them and spend more money, et cetera. So that team is critical to get your project from start to finish. And then the funding, the having the access to construction funding, construction lending is critical, right? Having a lender partner like HK Lending that'll help you qualify for the different loan products that are out there, and knowing how to navigate that, because there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of requirements, there's a lot of guidelines that are involved with construction loans, and not a lot of people understand how it works. So you could end up going down the path of trying to do a project, and then you get towards the financing piece and realize that you can't get your project approved because you didn't underwrite it properly, or you didn't know what the guidelines were going to be in terms of how much capital you would need to have. So that's critical to work with someone that understands the lending piece as well, so that you make the right decisions along the way. That's critical. And this is a big elephant. This is a gauntlet. You're trying to build something from the ground up. You're dealing with a lot of variables, a lot of things that can come up, but you just got to take it one step at a time, one bite at a time. I like to say, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So the new construction process, right? I've broken this down into, I think it's about 6 phases, and you'll notice that you can't even get to the financing piece until we get through these first 3 phases. So obviously land acquisition, what I talked about, you have to be able to search, do land search and marketing to find deals, whether you're either using a wholesaler or you're going direct to seller, which is probably the best option, is to try to go find a seller willing to sell for you to get the best deal. Assessing your survey, understanding what are setbacks, understanding what are like the minimum lot sizes that you need to be looking at in order for you to execute your deal, or what maybe is the size of the lot you need to have in order to do multiple deals, right? If you want to do like a replat, which is like splitting the lot up, highest and best use underwriting, right? Figuring out, okay, if I get a 5,000 square foot lot, how much units can I fit on that property, right? Or if you get a bigger one, how much units you can fit on it to maximize it. Because one of the key things we do in order to keep costs lower is we buy bigger lots and then we split them up, right? And then we can spread that cost. Now your per project land cost can go from, instead of it being like maybe 70 or 80,000, now you can get your cost maybe down to $30,000 or $25,000 per build if you can chop it up. So that's a critical step in the process as well. Title search and vetting, understanding what are the requirements in this city and in a certain area, because in Sugar Land there's different requirements than there are in Houston, right? And Houston is kind of unique to where they have deed restrictions. It's not like zoning like it is in a lot of places in America. So there could be situations where you think you can build something on a piece of land, and maybe even somebody built something on another piece of land in that area illegally, but they got away with it. And you might think, well, I can do that too. And then if you don't research the title documents and figure out what the deed restrictions say, your project can get red tagged and halted if they catch you, right? When you're applying for permitting, one of the first documents that they make you sign is that you understand deed restrictions, and you know that, or you are agreeing that you are following the deed restrictions. So you can't come back later and say, well, no one told me, because they literally make you sign an affidavit at permitting saying that you vetted that. And then price negotiation, right? Understanding how much you should pay for land, what's a good per square foot price, why you would pay more or less for a piece of land. Maybe if you have to do clearing of it, understanding how much demo would be to tear down a property, understanding, what you should really pay for that lot, because there's a lot of people out here overpaying for lots. And that's why you probably see prices so high. But, it's important to try to negotiate the best you can and understand what levers you can pull there. So that whole land acquisition process in and of itself is step one, identifying that land, that piece of land that's going to work for you for the project you want to execute on. And then next we got to deal with land entitlement. Now you're under contract, you've identified a piece of property, you need to entitle the land, right? You need to figure out how can I get it permitted? How can I get the architectural plans done, get the survey done, soil report, etc., right? So we have all these different steps of things that you need to do. So if you want to do multiple projects on a piece of land, you have to do a replat. A replat is where you're going to essentially re-subdivide the property, right? So if you have one lot, for example, here we took one big lot and we just split it down the middle. Now with the new ordinance that's passed in the city of Houston, you actually can't do this in a lot of cases anymore, to where you just split it down the middle, because they're not going to allow lots of certain sizes to do that, because they've restricted curb cuts and how many curb cuts you can have. So you got to understand the nuances of the ordinance of what you can and cannot do when it comes to replatting. And typically you'll get with a person that, a person that understands how to do the replatting. Replatting is technically something you can do on your own. If you understand how to do CAD drawings and you can read surveys and et cetera, you can actually submit your own replats. It's not like you have to hire someone, but it's good to hire someone that knows what they're doing. And once you've identified your replat, and the reason why you want to do your replat early is because you don't want to go forward on a project and then and get it financed and put debt on it and then try to replat, because the original property is going to be encumbered or with the lien holder. So if you try to do a project on the whole thing, you'd have to get lender approval before you could split it and do another project later. So you got to do that up front. So you got to make sure you take care of replat first thing when you acquire a piece of land, if that's what you're going to do. And then you want to get into identifying, obviously, when you're buying a piece of property, when you're already under contract, you should be looking at a survey at that time, right? Understanding what your buildable area is, how much space is available, what is restricted, that's what the setbacks are. It's telling you can't build on this portion, right? There might be a building line setback that says you can't put a building past this point on the lot. So you got to understand all those points. You got to understand easements. So for example, on this one, we have aerial easements in the back. So that means we can't build past a certain height, right? So that's essentially unbuildable area of the lot if I'm trying to go above 15 feet and there's a 15-foot restriction. So then that becomes less space that I have. So definitely analyzing your survey, understanding buildable area. That's going to help you also negotiate your price while you're trying to acquire that lot. So survey is critical to either get it from the seller or get one going right away during your option period or while you're in the contract. And then once you've analyzed all that stuff, the survey, you know how you're going to split it up. You know, you're going to get your soil report, and the soil report's important because it's needed with the civil engineer to figure out what you can build on it, right? You got to figure out what is the makeup of that piece of land for you to for what foundation to put on it, right? Because you got to know if you got to do pier and beam, if you could do slab on grade, etc. That information is going to come from your soil report. It's going to tell you the makeup of the land. So land entitlements is critical. And I always tell people, if you're going to get into this process, it's really hard to lose, because if you're buying a piece of land that is undeveloped and you get it under contract, buy it, entitle it, you've now increased the value of that project, of that property, right? So automatically you've already made money on your investment, right? If you have a lot that's ready and buildable, ready to go, there's a lot of builders that will take that from you to curb the time, right? That saves them time of doing all that. They can just go in and turn dirt. So even if you don't move forward with the project, but you've got it entitled and you got through the process and maybe you didn't want to go all the way through, there's a lot of wholesalers and people that will just do this, investors that will just do this part and then sell it off and make, double five figures on these properties. And a lot of people are doing that in Houston. So that is an opportunity, even just right there, right? So you don't have to go through the entire process. And then once you've got your land information, survey, soil report, you want to go get your architectural drawings done, right? You got to get with an architect that understands, what is it you're trying to do. That architect is either going to have a civil engineer or you bring in your own civil engineer in order to do the structural drawings, because you got to piece the actual architectural drawings with the structural information, right? So once the architect draws the design and figures out what they're going to do, what you're going to do on the project, the actual structural engineer is going to go ahead and figure out what are the details of how to build that and how to put it together. So at that point, critical decisions have to be made here where, one of the early mistakes we made was we didn't understand different building components and how that related to cost, right? So if you go in there like, yeah, let's do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to have these overhangs, and we're going to do this, big windows and all these different things, and then you get to your budget part, after you've already designed this beautiful structure, you realize that, you went past standard size windows, that's going to be an extra like $1,000 a window. You wanted these overhangs that are like 2 feet over the building. Now your floor system's $40,000, right? Yeah. So it's critical to understand and work with an architect also. That's why I love my architect, because he's also a builder. So he knows not to put crazy stuff in my drawings, because we're going to have to deal with that in the field, right? And that's a lot of what you'll see in this process is everyone assumes that you know what you're doing. So no one warns you or tells you like, hey, maybe you should think about this. Everyone's like, yeah, sure, you want that? Go ahead, right? So it's very important to understand. This is so critical. I can't harp on this enough. It's so critical at this stage to understand what is in your drawings, what comes back from your structural engineer, because even some structural engineers go overboard. And it's like sometimes you could push back and say, hey, do we really need to do all this, or can we rethink how we're doing this, or maybe we need to go back to the architect and redesign this a little bit so that we can save on some costs, right? An example of even just like the floor system, right? The floor system between the two levels, for example, you have choices based on how you've laid out the plan of going with a 2x12 system, which is just standard lumber you can pull off the shelf at Home Depot. Or you can go with an upgraded system called an I-joist, which is a little more structurally sound, but it gives you some benefits to be able to drill through the floor system and put piping and things like that, right? Or you can go even upgrade it from there, and you can go with open web truss. That was the bright idea I had on one of the second duplexes. We were like, yeah, let's do open web truss. That sounds awesome. Until you realize that now you've introduced additional permitting reviews, additional engineers involved to specifically draw those trusses. And those trusses take like 15 weeks to arrive or get done or whatever, right? This was during the pandemic that we had a really big issue even trying to find someone to sell us a open web truss. Like we were calling vendors, and they're like, we're not taking new clients. Actually, we're not even going to give you any trust. So that was a nightmare in and of itself. So you introduce these problems when you don't understand what you're choosing at this stage. So when they draw it on the plans and they're like, yeah, we can do this, do that, we didn't understand the implications. So that's why it's important to really have someone that can understand what are the decisions that you're making here. Even just, spans of like, how we have, everyone loves open concept and all that stuff, right? All that stuff has implications on what are the structural designs that are going to come back from your engineer. And I already covered this. So yeah, floor system could really hike your costs, right? Quality of finishes. So when people say, what does it cost to build? It's hard to give them a price. Yeah, that's why it's always like we have to see the plans, because we could look at something that looks innocent, but then what if you want high-end finishes? Now your prices shot up drastically, right? Depending on the finishes that you choose. Window sizes, like I mentioned, if you go past standard window sizes that are able to just be put off the shelf, now you've introduced custom order time, and it's going to be more money, right? Fire rating designs, the design of the fire rating system that's in your build. So we build only 2 or more units. So that introduces fire rated requirements, right? So where you're essentially having to divide the units and fireproof it so that if a fire starts in one unit, it doesn't quickly spread to the other. And there's certain permitting requirements involved in that. And, they have UL fire rating designs that have all kind of variations, and they're made up of different components. So some are made with commercial grade fire material, right? That yellow dense glass stuff that you might see on commercial buildings. Then some designs will say you could just use sheetrock from Home Depot that's 5/8, right? And you put fiberglass in between, or you put 2 layers. So depending on the makeup of that could increase your cost. And then obviously the exterior materials as well. Exterior cladding, meaning, are you trying to go with stucco? Are you trying to go with hardy siding? Or are you going to go with brick? All that stuff increases or decreases cost. You got a question? Oh, I thought you were waving. Okay. All right, so now that we've gotten through all that, now you're ready to talk about financing, because not until you have those designs, we can technically fund without a permit, but you don't want to. You're just going to cause yourself to either get less funds or have an issue, right? So I don't recommend it. So you got to get through permitting, or at least get to the end of permitting. You have to have your plans drawn up and get a budget together from your contractors, figure out what that cost is, because once we go through the process of financing, we actually need that budget breakdown from you, and that budget breakdown is sent to the appraiser, because the appraiser is going to determine, based on what you're planning to build, what materials you're going to use, what is going to be the future value. So we can't guess. You can't come and say, okay, well, you can't skip this and say, well, we think we're going to build or spend this much. Can you just tell me how much you can get it funded? It doesn't work that way, because you have to have all that information, right? And then once you order your appraisal, it essentially is setting it in stone, because your budget is attached to the appraisal report when it's done, right? So that's why you have to go through all this before you can even talk about financing. and what you can really get funded for. Now, we can tell you early, based on your income and based on the assets that you have, you could probably qualify for up to this amount. So that's why you want to talk to us early to let us know, okay, well, what is your financial situation, so we know how much you can get approved for. So you know what you can target, how much you should spend on a build and on land, right? And one of the things I break down in my book is kind of the funding formula, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, and how to work through how much to offer on a piece of land. So I talk a lot about the rules that I'm going to cover here in a little bit, and I actually have, I forget what page is on, but I actually have a funding formula in here that'll tell you how to work out your numbers and figure out how much you need to offer to begin with. Because you got to kind of know the end from the beginning before you even get started, right? So that's critical. So like I said, construction financing, you're going to run into this nasty hurdle up front, right? The prior experience. Really and truly, you could either go two routes, and I'm going to break that down in a little bit, but the prior experience piece is if you're essentially having to build an investment property or wanting to build an investment property, you got to figure that out. So if you don't have the prior experience, you have to partner with someone that has prior experience that you can get on their, form a joint venture with them, and then you can leverage their track record, right? That's how you would do that essentially. You would say, hey, if you have a person that has track record like myself, that I have prior HUDs that have built properties, if we form an LLC together, the lender is going to say, okay, good, you have someone on your team that's experienced, right? And then the alternative is, if you're not building an investment property, you can use conventional construction loans, which will allow you to, which will enforce you bringing in a builder, and your builder is the one who they're going to vet, right? So they're going to make sure your builder is qualified. And so there's really only two paths, right? So that's that investor private money. Technically, it's called hard money. I don't like to use that term, but it's the private money route where it's the most flexible. You can do kind of whatever you want, but they have those prior experience requirements, and it's going to be a little bit heavier lifting. And the other route is conventional construction loans, where you use a conventional one-time close construction, which is a conventional mortgage, and you can get an investment property, primary residence, or second home funded using a conventional construction loan. So, and I'm talking about investor private money route here because there's different formulas for a private money route of getting hard money, and there's a different formula for going with conventional, because if you're going with conventional and you're going to live in the property, they'll let you borrow a lot more. But if you're going the hard money route and you're buying an investment or building an investment, they're going to be a lot more strict on how much they're going to let you borrow, right? So there's a funding formula essentially of how it's calculated. And this is a broad brush, so you may find someone else, some lender that'll do better terms or whatever. If you have a direct relationship, that's great. But I'm just talking broad in general. Most funders are going to go with this essential structure. They're going to first determine, they're going to determine how much they're going to lend you in two layers, right? First, they're going to figure out what is your ceiling. So that's why we need that appraisal. That's why we need that budget, because that appraisal is going to be what is the future value of what you're trying to build, and you cannot go above 70% of that number, right? That's your lending ceiling. And that's also wonderful because you have 30% in your project in order to have cushion of what the outcome is going to be, right? Because you can't go above that 70% to get funding. It keeps you under that, under that threshold, right? So that's why I always say it's kind of hard to mess up the new construction stuff because from a lending perspective, because you have all that cushion versus flips or whatever where your margins are way thinner typically. And so once we've determined your ceiling of what you can possibly lend, can possibly borrow, now they're going to look at cost. And they're going to say, okay, well, we'll give you, you're going to build a single family, we'll give you 85%, you bring 15 of cost, right? And what they're doing is they're looking at the lesser of. So if the ceiling is higher on your after repair value, they're going to go with cost because cost is lower. If your cost has gone over the 70% ceiling, they're going to take the 70% ceiling. So if you go over the ceiling, you're going to come up with a lot more money out of pocket if you want to execute on the deal, which is not a good idea, right? You shouldn't even be going over the 70% ceiling, but some people would if they really want to do it. So in this example, 500,000 ARV, most you can borrow is 350,000. That'll be the actual ceiling, right? And then what we'll look, the next test is what is the actual cost or your budget. And this is also where you want to be smart, right? And figure out, well, what is lesser? Is the ceiling or the budget lesser? And can I put some extra line items in there that I can pull from, right? Like maybe my budget is, maybe my lending ceiling is high, but my actual cost is only 300, but I want to borrow 325 because I want to put an extra 25 in my pocket during construction or whatever, right? Then you make sure you make that decision before you submit your loan, right? And you make sure that budget is correct. But here, 80% of actual cost, so if cost is 350, you could only borrow 280. So that 350 is there as your ceiling. But if you come and say, well, I only need 280, you're only going to be able to borrow 280. You're not going to be able to go up to 350. So yeah, you're down, and that 80% cost is what they're going to lend, right? What the lender's going to lend. So you got to bring the other part of that 20%. And depending on what you're trying to build, if you go more units, typically your leverage gets dropped, right? So they may say, well, we're only going to fund, we're going to put your ceiling at 65% ARV, right? And that might make the ARV now lower than the cost. So that's why it's hard to determine what you're trying to build until you figure out what it is how much you can get funded until you know what you're going to build. So pros and cons of the private money. The reason why I use the private money is because you can build for yourself. I want to build my own projects. No income documentation, no property restrictions really. You can build 1 to 4 family, kind of build whatever you want. Obviously, the struggle is, for most people, is the track record piece. You can get around the track record, partnership, or maybe you have a lot of liquid assets, right? Let's say you have a stock account. So for example, we have a funder that will do 30% reserves if you're brand new. They'll approve you. If you show that you got 200,000 or whatever it is, depending on what your project is, you got that sitting in a stock account or retirement account or whatever, they'll say, okay, we're good to fund you because we see that you got a lot of reserves in case something happens, right? So there is a way to get around that. And obviously heavier lifting with this because you got more out of pocket. Typically though, whatever you paid for land, so you pay cash for land, that typically ends up being your 20% or 15% of what cost is anyway. So you're essentially only coming to closing with like closing costs if you've done it right? So it's not like you're gonna have to buy the land and spend a whole lot more money. You typically can get the credit for the land that you paid for. Now, conventional loans, the construction financing formula is different. With a conventional one-time close loan with a single-family residence that you're going to live in, they'll let you go all the way up to 95%. So if you want to build your own primary residence, you only got to put 5% down, right? So that's a way higher ceiling. That's the only point in time I would tell somebody to go up that high is if you're going to live in it, then it's okay. But if you're doing investment property, that number goes down. So conventional one-time closed construction loan requires 25% down, right? If it's an investment property, right? If it's a second home, it's a little bit, I think it's like 15. But the funding formula is slightly different. And they do the same thing here as well. They go with the lesser of the two. So either ceiling or cost, right? So that's the beauty of that. The other really great thing about the one-time closed construction, which I always tell people is preferred, if you have stable income and you have the great credit, because you have to have a minimum credit score of 700. The reason why this is preferred is because your interest rate is going to be a lot less, most likely going to be single digits, and it auto converts to a 30-year fixed mortgage at the end of construction. So you've only closed once and you're able to stabilize the property. If you're going to sell it, it doesn't matter because you're just going to offload it anyway. But in the other mortgage, the private, if you go the private money route, you have to pay off the construction loan after 12 months, right? So you only get that 12-month period. And then you gotta refinance if you're gonna hold it and do another loan. So in this example, 500,000 ARV. If you're gonna live in it, 5% down, they'll fund up to 475. That's your ceiling. So you can submit a budget at 475 and they'll fund it, right? 5% down. And typically, if you've paid for that lot cash, you're getting your money back at closing, right? So if your 5% requirement on a one-time close construction is way less than what you spent for the land, you're getting that money, you're getting the check at closing back because they're going to reimburse you. And then you can include a lot more stuff, right? When you go with the one-time close construction. So here's an example. Their out-of-pocket down payment 5% is only $17,500. That's way better than spending $100,000 or whatever it might be to close with the private money. And then also with the one-time close construction, the beauty of this is you can wrap in interest payments during your construction loan. The interest payments that you have, you can wrap that in your budget. Soft costs like all the plans, permits, all that stuff can get wrapped into your budget, and they reimburse all that at closing. So that's why it's a really great product. Low down payment, the pros and cons, low down payment. Interest payments can be wrapped in, lower interest rate, single digits typically. The challenge here is your builder has to be approved. So we do have an approval process. The application fee is $150 for your builder to get vetted. Essentially, they're going to submit their trade references. They're going to check their business credit, stuff like that. And as long as they get approved, you can hire them as your builder. And then credit, minimum $700 for the one-time close conventional, and your DTI has to be low. Only other thing that's better than this is VA. That VA construction loan is a cheat code. 100%. 100. No ceiling, no lesser than, no lesser of. 100%. This is the ultimate cheat code. No payments during construction. So if you need to go find a VA veteran somewhere and say, hey, make a friend, you can get something built. Right? So that VA construction loan is a cheat code. We do now have FHA one-time close, I believe. So 3.5% down, and you can build also. And 1 to 4 family. So that's huge. VA, go ahead.
Caveat with VA is no payment during construction.
Right, that's what I just, yep. Mm-hmm. I wish I had gone to the Army. And your credit score doesn't have to be high. Or VA, I don't know if you saw that, but VA, yeah, they go down to low 5s. Technically, there is no credit requirement for VA, but lenders put overlays on it. And then they'd say, well, you got to be at like a 580. But some of them now are even letting veterans go down to like 500. Wow. So all that's a lot. I know I've said a lot. Any questions thus far? Everyone's good? I'm being clear?
I can wait till the end.
Okay.
I can wait too.
Okay.
Me too. On the VA side, is that for construction and like fix and flip?
No, VA is only for if you're gonna intend to live in it. So people will play that gray line. I'm not gonna be the one up here telling you to play that game of like, well, I was gonna live in it, but then I rented it out. That's bank fraud. So you're gonna hear from me only if you're gonna live in it. You can use a veteran loan. There's people out there teaching that you can build it. You can use a veteran loan for investment. That's not what I read in the guidelines. So it's only primary residence.
Is it similar to the FHA where it's like a year requirement or?
Do they have a year on VA? I don't know that they say. They don't technically have a guideline that says you have to be there for a year. They say it reads you have to intend to move in. So all I'm saying is don't play, don't play with these people, especially with all the stuff going on. You know, they don't have a task force running around, but I'm just saying, you're gonna hear from me, you got to move into it. I don't believe the guidelines say that there's a 12-month minimum, so that's not in the verbiage.
Yeah, the only caveat with that kind of stuff is, once you live in a 2-year with the capital gains and all of that.
Yeah, that's the benefit you get, obviously, with any property. That has nothing to do with VA though. That's any property. So if you're gonna build something, I always say at least live in it for 2 years so you get that tax-free equity after that time. So okay, no questions here. So we'll get into construction. So I just broke it. This is oversimplified. I've just really kind of divided this up into 6 phases. There's a lot of steps in between these 6 phases, right? Which is why I say mentorship is key. But essentially, once you've built a home, this is really covering everything, right? You got to get through your foundation phase. You're gonna prep your site, clear your site, build your pad out, do a demolition of a house if it's existing. Get the lot ready, establish your boundary, and pour your foundation. Critical step number 1, right? You're gonna work closely with your engineers at this point. Make sure your soil is right. Make sure your compaction is right. Make sure you pour your foundation right. Critical stage. These top 3 stages are absolutely the most important. Well, the 4, because this is where everything can go off the rails, right? So you gotta make sure you're locked in, and you make sure you're attentive on your project. Even if you hired a builder, right? I would get a third-party inspector to come in if you don't know what you're looking at, or you don't have anyone with you to have them look at these things, because I've seen even major builders making mistakes in a lot of these areas, right? Because it's just a matter of oversight, right? And making sure they're doing it right. Framing, right? Once you've done foundation, let it cure for a little bit. Then you're gonna start putting sticks up, right? Throwing your framing up. This is when it starts becoming real for me. Yeah. When I can start walking through the walls and walking through the floor plan, there's no feeling like it. There's no feeling like it. To see something you worked on for 6 months on paper and see that thing come to life, the only thing closer to that is making some children. That's it. So, and obviously that's greater than anything, but it's literally that type of experience to be able to just see what you've created and walk through this thing, especially if you're going to own it and keep it long term. It's unbelievable. So framing, that at this stage, once the foundation is done, you're trying to get dried in. What they mean by dried in is trying to get everything sealed up on the house, right? Framing up, OSB sheathing around, get your exterior windows in, seal those up, close up all your exterior doors. So now your house is sealed in, your roof boards are in, your shingles are up, and now you're dried in. The elements are not going to be a concern at this point, right? Theft could be a concern at this point, but the elements are pretty much kept out at this point. And we like to use zip sheathing, which is the green boards where you tape it up. I love that because once they tape that up and roll it, we're sealed up. The paper stuff that they put on the Tyvek, that's not as solid. That's fine if you want to use that. We've been using it for years, but we go with the little bit of an upgraded exterior sheathing because we want that long term. A lot of the stuff we're doing, we want it to last quite a bit. So that's when you get your shell all dried in. Critical stage, right? Making sure your framing's right, making sure your structure is solid, all the tie downs are good. You're gonna get several inspections at this stages. They're gonna inspect foundation. Once that's done, let it cure. Once you get to framing and all that, you're gonna have a series of inspections. They're gonna inspect straps, windstorm straps, hurricane straps, all these different things, right? They're gonna inspect your sheathing, the nail pattern on your sheathing. They're gonna inspect, now the waterproofing. I believe they've introduced a new inspection now in Houston, and these things are always changing. So if you're not in the field or you don't have someone doing this, you're gonna miss something. And they'll show up on an inspection and say, "Oh, rip that out. We have new rules." Wow. And it's a pain in the butt. Like all of a sudden, I bought all my fixtures, spent $2,000 on fixtures, and now you want to tell me at the plumbing phase, "Oh, we don't allow these fixtures anymore." Wow. Right? I don't even want to get started on the city of Houston inspections and stuff like that, but That's why it's important to have a network too, other people doing it, because they can say, hey, we just ran into this. Make sure you think about this or whatever, because it's coming, or we just faced this. So make sure you don't make that mistake on your project. So that's the beauty of why I created Equity Builders. That's why I love the network of builders that I know here in Houston as well, because we communicate and share this information. That's what it's about, right? And then, so once your exterior cladding is all the, once we get waterproof, everything's dried in, we put the siding on, right? Or you can put the brick up, or you can put your stucco or whatever. That's exterior cladding, right? Put your shingles up. Now you're completely dried in. Now it's time to go put all your mechanicals in: plumbing, HVAC, electrical, right? These 3 phases of what they call the rough-in phase is super critical, right? You want to have a meeting with all these guys before you even get to this stage, so that you kind of communicate who's doing what, and so that they're not crossing up. One of the things I would recommend too, if you have a larger project and you're brand new, maybe even try to pay for an MEP drawing, something called an MEP drawing, where you can get an engineer to map where your plumbing, HVAC, and all that's going to go. If you had a really small house, it's not that it probably is not worth it, because it's going to increase your initial costs. But one of the challenges you run into is if you don't have that, a lot of these guys are crossing up with each other. Plumbers putting pipes all over the place. HVAC is cutting through his stuff. Electrical's like, why the hell did he put that there? So it's like this whole fight. So you got to make sure you try to get with these guys, get them to plan that out, and figure out who's going to route what, where, and where it's going to go, right? Critical phase. Once you've got that all the mechanicals in, you can kind of take a breath, right? Because that's like the meat and bones of everything you got to get right. All that stuff's inspected. Granted, the inspectors are just going to check the box, so you got to make sure you got someone watching your back on this stuff, because you can find issues later once you've already done things. So you got to know what you're looking at, right? And then once you're done with that, mechanicals, you're going to seal up every part of your house, all the holes, all the gaps. Insulation guy's going to seal that up. Put in all your insulation, get that inspected, you're going to close up your walls, right? Sheetrock comes in, close up all the wall. That's when it's like, wow, now you can really feel the space, right, of what you've built. And then you're just going in the lipstick at this point. Floors, cabinets, paint, doors, trim, tile. Your house is pretty much finished, right? Exterior finishes is the last thing. You're going to paint your house, do your landscaping, do your grading, put your drainage in, and you're done. All right, that's essentially the construction project. No, I oversimplified that, but that's why I have Equity Builders, is to help you through that. Your exit strategy is key at the end. What are you going to do at this stage? You got to determine, are you going to sell or are you going to hold? I'm a proponent of holding. I want to hold everything I build. Obviously, there's decisions that have to be made. If interest rates are too high, whatever, we got to sell it. They won't sell it. But everything I touch, I had this conversation with my wife the other day. I was like, I'm so upset we had to sell all these different projects, but we were trying to build a track record and all that, right? Because the lender's like, well, we want to see that you sold something or whatever, right? And then we need comps and all these different reasons. But everything we touch, we try to hold. And because when you sell, the IRS is taking most of that, right? Not most of it. They're gonna take a chunk. Right? Sales costs you got to pay your agents. You got to pay concessions possibly to buyers in this market. And you get rid of your printing machine. These homes, to me, are money printers. Right? And I asked someone else, I borrowed some money and they're paying the debt. I don't know anything else you can find. Stocks don't do that. Nothing else does that, to where you have someone else, you borrow something and they pay for it. Right? If you want to buy a stock, you got to go put dollar for dollar. Right? You put the money in there, you borrow against the stocks, and then Trump says something, and it goes below a certain threshold, they're taking them stocks away. Right? No one's taking my house unless I don't pay them. Right? You can argue who owns what, and if you really own it. If I got the keys, I own it. Okay? If I could tell you, kick rocks, get off my property, I own it. Well, however you want to debate that, that's fine. So I love holding all the tax benefits, right? You can pull cash out. If you know, after the tenant or whoever's paid it down after a while, you can pull cash out and it's tax-free. You can use that. That's what I love, right? Build, borrow, live life. That's essentially when these things get paid down, we're gonna pull the money out, let someone else pay it. Right. And we just get you can vacation on that if you want. Obviously, the smart thing to do is reinvest it, yeah. Right. But you get to use that money however you see fit. Right. And the IRS gets to touch none of it. Right. And then when you pass on, all that debt, essentially all the stuff that you owe, taxes that you owe, gets wiped out. Right? If you structure it properly, it can get wiped out. Yeah. Definitely talk to a professional about that, but that is the game they're playing. They are playing the game of leveraging assets, taking this money and building up their portfolio, building up their wealth, and that stuff gets wiped out at your death. So it's like it's amazing. It's amazing if you can understand how to structure that. Let's see. Yeah, the cash flow, that money printing. Yep. The cash flow will be small at first, but you got to if we stick it out. See, like our generation, or we're coming in after civil rights and all these different things. We didn't really have much, so we don't have anything passed on, right? So we got to make the sacrifice of taking a little bit of cash flow now until that gets bigger later, right? Then when you got all these properties throwing off all this cash flow, it's a different story. Their life will be totally different than how ours was, right? So it's critical to think long term. And that bonus depreciation is a huge help. Tax deductions on your interest rate, huge help. All these things reduce your taxes. And there's techniques where you can actually take, so I don't want to go into this. I break this down in my book, where you essentially can figure out how to deduct what's supposed to be only passive from your assets and take it off of W-2 taxes, earned income. There's ways to do this. There's all kind of loopholes around this stuff. I break this down in my book. In the back, I have a whole section on this of how you can actually, I was making $200,000 a year in corporate America as a programmer and getting tax returns back, tax refunds back, right? Because we had assets that we could write off and deductions we could take, right? So it's huge to hold, in my opinion. And so, like I said, build, borrow, live life, pass it down, tax-free. Why do we build versus buy? So I'm going to show you some numbers here. So you tell me what you want to do after you see these numbers. Okay? It's cheaper to build. When you buy retail, this is the situation you're facing right now. So typically, duplex in Houston is what? Close to 600,000? Some smaller ones, 500. Yeah. Right? So I use an example of 600,000. Right? Mortgage payment's almost $4,000. That's like right where ours landed. Right? On our duplex, we built our duplex. Well, I'll just run through the numbers. I'll show you in a minute. Insurance, and these are real numbers. So I'm giving you real actual numbers of rates today and numbers today. Insurance quotes today. Insurance on a duplex is over $450 today in Sunnyside. It's absolutely ridiculous for what it should be. Like it was like closer to like less than $200 a month, but you know it's up there. Property taxes are up there, right, with the value being higher. So you got all this stuff into your payment, right? You're paying retail for a $600,000 duplex. Tax rate in Sunnyside, we're calculating Sunnyside area, that 77033, tax rate is like 2.2. Your mortgage payment is at $5,600 if you buy retail, right? If you try to go get a traditional loan and buy one of these duplexes, your payment is going to be north of $5,000, right? Equity position is low because you're only putting down low down payment, most people, right? So your out of pocket is low, but your overhead is high, right? So let me show you what we paid. Right, our bill costs for this is a per project, right? So we bought a lot, we split it up, we did two. That's how we got some of our costs down. So all in $460, right? Appraisal came back at $600K, right after we were done. Mortgage payment is down to $2,642. Same interest rate, same insurance, same property taxes, right? Our mortgage payment and the mortgage insurance on that, our mortgage payment is $42.64 in this scenario, right? We didn't borrow 460, we left 60,000 there so that we could get our payment even lower, right? That was the choice we made, but we could have pulled out another 60,000, right? So we have our payment even lower so that we can get more cash flow, right? That's a choice that you can make. So that's a savings of over $1,300 a month because we decided to build versus buy, right? Our cost is way lower. Our equity position is way higher, right? Your equity position, the last one was like 12,000. We're looking at over 100,000 equity. And our overhead is way lower than even what you see here. So to me, that's a no-brainer. You decide. Why we build multi-unit properties?
Can you go back on that page, please?
Right here?
Yeah.
Why we build multi-unit properties? Essentially more doors equals more cash flow. Simple as that. Occupancy, if you're vacant on one, you're at least at 50% instead of 0%, right? I'll take 50% all day over 0. At least that mortgage can be helped, right? You can really help with that. Get help with that. And just look at these numbers, like, you know, the wage disparity from, this is like before 1980, top 1%, look at how much more money they're making. And this is just showing, this is just slightly past 2010, right? Look at the gap of wages compared to what the bottom 90% of people, of income earners are making versus the top 1%. I need more cash flow. we need to try to close that gap, right? More units, more cash flow. They figured out the game, right? The amount of the cost of a home to your income is the gap is getting wider, right? The amount of money it costs to actually have housing, the requirements are getting even steeper. And the way that you kind of equalize the playing field here is more units. If you have more units generating income on a property, that $4,000 payment or whatever it is now gets broken up into multiple payers of the mortgage, right? Now, if I have a duplex, my mortgage is being paid by 2 renters versus just 1. If you have a home that's at the same price, you only got 1 person and rents aren't going that high. It's not jumping overnight. So if the most you can get is $3,000 in an area or $3,500, you're still way underwater if you're trying to build a duplex, right? Now, if you're gonna house hack it and live in it, it's still better than paying a mortgage all by yourself, right? So I still recommend, if your mortgage is $4,000 or whatever for a duplex, and you're renting the other side out and getting over $2,000 a month for it, now your mortgage cost is 50% less than what it would have been, right? So that's still a plus, and you get equity and all that stuff. So add additional income to spread the costs around is kind of how you get this number reduced. It's how you get that disparity reduced, because now you're generating more income. And the more that income hits your bank account, the more that hits your balance sheet, that stuff helps you to borrow more money, right? Do more things. And so that's kind of why we do that. And I'll just show you a couple of the projects that we built. 1017 Calvin. So this was the second duplex in a 2 duplex project that we did, to where, you know, we've been doing this since the beginning, really, after our first one, where we buy bigger lots and we split them up. And so you'll see it was a huge slanted, awkward lot. We chopped it in half, did a single story, and did a two-story duplex. And this was the second duplex, the 2-story. So even with top quality finishes, brick, we did hardy siding, we even did, what do they call that? panels or whatever. What is it? Yeah. Well, but there's a I forget, shiplap we did on the ceiling. Yeah. And because we build ourselves, we're able to take those savings and actually build higher quality to it, right? Because you're gonna pay more if you hire a builder, but you know, we choose to do it ourselves and put those cost savings into the property. And people didn't have the vision until we furnished it. Everyone walked through it and was like, I don't know. As soon as we furnished it, it sold. So make sure you budget to furnish everything, because people just don't have the vision to see it like you would see it. But they still don't see it. Yeah. I'll tell you a mistake we made on that window that I don't like to blame the architect because I missed it. But it's just a minor detail of 6 inches, I think it was. The window, how it opened, didn't meet code by like 6 inches, so they told us to rip it out, right? It's because there was no communication of how the window was supposed to be and all that. So critical to know what you're doing at the planning phase to make sure you don't make mistakes like that. Yeah, that definitely increased the budget. So that's it, folks. I have 6 ways that I can help you. I've offered the ability for you guys to leverage my time, my experience, my track record. This is kind of a la carte, depending on whatever you need. My recommendation is definitely start with the book. You know, I have a lot of information there. The blueprint is in there of what we're doing, the steps that you need to take. That's kind of the entry point. I have books out there if you guys want to grab it. And I have a deal for you guys today, or 50% off. But you can take the course that I have, Equity Builders, where I break down the whole pre-construction process, all the steps you need involved in there. I go over, it's like 10 weeks, 10 videos, an hour long, where I break down all those different phases of how do you look at a survey, how do you read plans, how do you underwrite a deal, how do you get financing. You know, how do you, all that stuff. I even have a course in there of how do you submit your plans for permitting, right? So that's all in the course there, the Equity Builders course. The online group mentorship is if you want to get active, right? You want support. You're like, I can do it myself. I'm going to do the work, meaning I just need someone to kind of be there to coach me through it. I have a group mentorship, which is a monthly, bi-weekly meeting that we do, a coaching call. And I just let you leverage my resources, my time, and I help coach you through the process if you're going to do the work. And if you don't want to do the work, you want someone else to do it, maybe you're working a 9 to 5 or whatever, you just want to partner with someone, that's what my turnkey service is about, right? It's like, hey, I have the capital, I don't have the time. Can you just build the wealth for me, right? Like, let's just build together. And we just split the proceeds of the project if you want to do a partnership, or we just do the turnkey pre-construction service where we just do all of the pre-construction work to get you ready to turn dirt. And then you could just hand that baton off to a builder and let them build it, right? So the turnkey service is the pre-construction part. The personal mentorship is actually one-on-one where we actually work with you if you want to do it. And then you got the partnership joint venture if you want to leverage our track record to get your first project done. So however, wherever you need help, we're making it available. Either way, we're going to keep it going.